The morning mist clung to the gnarled grapevines as I walked through rows that my grandfather had planted 50 years ago. Dew dampened my boots, and the autumn air carried the rich scent of ripening grapes, a scent that had filled my childhood memories at Sterling Ridge Vineyard. I'm Katherine Sterling, 34, and until last month, I was a sommelier at an upscale San Francisco restaurant. Now, thanks to my grandfather's unexpected will, I owned 150 acres of what my family called worthless wine country property. What a joke, my cousin Peter had sneered at the will reading. The old man's vineyards haven't produced decent wine in years. The land's not even worth the property taxes. He was right about one thing: Sterling Ridge hadn't released a wine in nearly a decade. The once prestigious label had fallen into obscurity after a series of poor harvests and changing market tastes. But something about the property's decline never sat right with me. More brooding among the vines. My Aunt Victoria's sharp voice cut through my morning reverie. She stood at the edge of the row, designer boots unsuitable for vineyard work sinking into the soft earth. The real estate agent is coming today. Don't make this difficult, Katherine. The wine in those bottles. I've never seen anything like it. The complexity, the balance. Do you have any idea what you're sitting on? I led him to grandfather's study, where decades of vineyard records filled the shelves. What do you mean? He pulled out his analysis results. This wine was made from a grape variety I've never encountered. The DNA analysis suggests it's a unique hybrid, perfectly adapted to this specific terroir. If you still have the source vines. We haven't pulled any vines, I said slowly. Grandfather insisted on maintaining them all, even after he stopped producing. Thomas's eyes lit up. Show me the vineyard maps. Now. I turned to face her, remembering how she'd laughed at the will reading. I told you, I'm not selling. Don't be foolish, she sighed, brushing imaginary dirt from her silk blouse. This place is a money pit. The equipment is outdated, the vines are past their prime, and the wine cellar flooded years ago. Take the developer's offer while it's still on the table. But I'd spent every summer here until I was 18, learning about wine from my grandfather. I remember him talking about the unique terroir of this hillside, about how the morning fog and afternoon sun created perfect conditions for his special grape varieties. Grandfather wouldn't have let the vineyard fail without a reason, I said, more to myself than to her. Your grandfather, she said coldly, was a stubborn old man who couldn't accept that times had changed, just like you can't accept that this place is finished. After she left, I walked to the old winery building. The equipment might be outdated, but it was meticulously maintained. The sorting tables, the crusher destemmer, the oak barrels, everything was clean and well preserved, as if waiting to be used. My phone buzzed. Another message from the developer. Final offer, $2.5 million for the entire property. Decision needed by Friday. It was a generous offer for a failing vineyard. Almost too generous. They're really pushing hard, Marcus observed, appearing at my elbow. He'd been the vineyard manager here for 30 years, and the only employee who'd stayed after production stopped. What aren't they telling us, Marcus? I asked, showing him the message. Why are they so eager to buy a worthless property? He adjusted his worn vineyard hat, looking uncomfortable. Your grandfather, he had his reasons for stopping production. Things he didn't tell the family. What things? Before he could answer, my phone rang. Thomas Chen, a renowned wine authenticator I'd known from my sommelier days. Katherine, I need to see you immediately. It's about those bottles you asked me to examine. Last week, I found a case of unlabeled wine bottles in grandfather's study, dated from the vineyard's last production year. I'd sent them to Thomas for analysis, more out of curiosity than hope. What did you find? Not over the phone, he said urgently. And Katherine? Don't tell anyone I'm coming. An hour later, Thomas's Porsche pulled up the gravel drive. He carried his testing equipment and what looked like historical wine records. This is extraordinary, he said without preamble. For the next hour, we pored over my grandfather's meticulous records. The mysterious grape variety was documented in code, planted throughout the vineyard in a pattern only someone who knew what to look for would recognize. Your grandfather, Thomas said with growing excitement, was a genius. He created something unprecedented, a grape variety that combines the best characteristics of old-world wines with perfect adaptation to this microclimate. Do you understand what this means? Before I could answer, voices drifted in from the driveway. My Aunt Victoria returning with the real estate agent and my cousins. Katherine, she called. The agent needs to see the property now. Thomas quickly packed his equipment. Don't tell them anything, he whispered. And whatever you do, don't sell. I need to make some calls. As he slipped out the back door, I found a leather-bound journal I'd never noticed before, tucked behind my grandfather's desk. Inside, in his familiar handwriting, was a message. My dearest Katherine, if you're reading this, you've already begun to uncover what I worked so hard to protect. The real treasure of Sterling Ridge isn't in its past, but in its future. The wine in the hidden cellar will show you the way. But be careful. There are those who would take this discovery for themselves if they knew. Trust Marcus, he knows where to look. All my love, grandfather. Hidden cellar. The only cellar I knew of had flooded years ago. Unless. Marcus, I called softly, finding him pruning nearby vines. We need to talk about what grandfather was really doing here. He glanced nervously at my approaching family members. Meet me at the old oak tree at midnight. And Katherine, don't sign anything they put in front of you today. Looking at my aunt's determined expression as she marched up with the real estate agent, I had a feeling this was just the beginning. Grandfather had left me more than a vineyard. He'd left me a mystery. And somewhere on these 150 acres, a hidden wine cellar held secrets that could change everything. At midnight, the vineyard was silent except for the soft rustle of wind through the vines. Marcus waited by the ancient oak tree, holding an old brass key I'd never seen before. Your grandfather made me swear to protect it, he said, leading me past the flooded wine cellar toward a hillside I'd known since childhood. To wait until the right time, until you were ready. He brushed away years of carefully cultivated ivy, revealing a weathered door set into the hillside. The key turned with a heavy click. Welcome, Marcus said softly, to the real Sterling Ridge cellar. The temperature dropped as we descended stone steps. Motion sensors activated soft lighting, revealing something that took my breath away. An enormous underground facility, climate-controlled and immaculate, filled with thousands of bottles. Grandfather built all this? I whispered, taking in the state-of-the-art wine storage systems. Over decades, the flooded cellar above was just a cover. Marcus walked to a central computer terminal. This is where he perfected it, the Sterling varietal. The terminal contained thousands of entries, detailed notes on grape breeding, climate data, soil chemistry. My grandfather hadn't given up on winemaking. He'd been conducting the most ambitious viticultural research project I'd ever seen. Why all the secrecy? Because, came Thomas Chen's voice from the stairs, what your grandfather created is worth billions. I spun around. Thomas held up his hands apologetically. Marcus called me. You need to understand what you're dealing with. He connected his laptop to the terminal, pulling up his analysis. Your grandfather didn't just create a new grape variety. He created one that's immune to most common vine diseases, drought-resistant, and produces wines of unprecedented quality. Do you understand what that means for the industry? Before I could respond, another voice echoed from above. It means we've all been played for fools. Aunt Victoria stood in the doorway, her face illuminated by the cellar lights. Behind her, my cousins Peter and Diana looked equally shocked. How long have you known about this? Victoria demanded. I just found out, I said honestly. But it explains a lot, doesn't it? Why the developers were so eager to buy. They must have suspected. The developers? Thomas laughed. Katherine, every major wine producer in the world would kill for this research. These vines could revolutionize the industry. Victoria stepped forward. We can sell it. Split the profits. As a family. No, I cut her off. This isn't about money. This is about grandfather's legacy. Legacy. Peter scoffed. Wake up, Katherine. This is business. Is it? I walked to a section of special bottles, each marked with my grandfather's distinctive S stamp. Marcus, are these who I think they are? He nodded. The first successful vintages from the new vines. Your grandfather was waiting for the perfect moment to release them. I pulled out my phone, showing them Thomas's analysis. These wines score higher than any vintage ever tested. Ever, in history. The cellar fell silent as that sank in. There's more, Marcus said quietly. Show them Thomas. Thomas pulled up satellite images of the vineyard. The soil composition here is unique, perfectly suited to these vines. You couldn't replicate these growing conditions anywhere else. This land isn't worth millions. It's priceless. Victoria sank onto a storage crate. All those years watching him putter around this failing vineyard. He was building something revolutionary. I finished. Something that needed to be protected until it was ready. Over the next few weeks, the true scope of my inheritance emerged. The Sterling varietal wasn't just disease-resistant. It produced wines that combined the best qualities of multiple noble grape varieties. The secret cellar contained over a decade of perfect vintages, each potentially worth thousands per bottle. Major wine producers came calling, offering astronomical sums for the rights to the vines. Agricultural companies wanted to study the disease-resistant properties. Universities requested research access. But I had other plans. 6 months later, I stood in the restored winery as the first official production of Sterling Ridge in a decade began. The original equipment, so carefully maintained, hummed back to life. Limited release, I told the gathered wine journalists. Just 1,000 bottles. We're calling it legacy. The first public tasting of my grandfather's life's work. My phone buzzed constantly with pre-orders from top restaurants and collectors worldwide. The waiting list was years long. Victoria approached as the crowds dispersed. I was wrong, she said simply. We all were. What you've done here. What grandfather did. I corrected her. I'm just continuing his work. The family dynamics had shifted dramatically. Peter now managed our new tasting room, his business degree finally serving the vineyard instead of trying to sell it. Diana's marketing expertise helped build the Sterling Ridge brand into something legendary. Even Victoria had come to appreciate the value of patience and tradition. That evening, after everyone had left, I walked the sunset-lit vineyard with Marcus, checking on the precious vines my grandfather had spent decades perfecting. He knew me, Marcus said, touching a leaf gently. Knew you'd understand that some things can't be rushed, can't be bought or sold, have to be nurtured. I smiled, remembering my grandfather's words about terroir, how the best wines reflect not just the soil and climate, but the patience and love invested in them. The next year, Legacy was rated the highest-scoring wine in history. Sterling Ridge became a pillar of the wine world, not just for our exceptional wines, but for our contributions to sustainable viticulture. The disease-resistant properties of our vines helped other vineyards survive changing climate conditions. My grandfather's research, shared selectively with the scientific community, advanced the entire field of viticulture. The vineyard became a center for research and innovation, just as he'd envisioned. One evening, I found an envelope in his old desk, dated for this very day. My dearest Katherine, by now you've discovered that true value isn't in what others see, but in what we patiently nurture and protect. Sterling Ridge was never failing. It was evolving, waiting for the right moment and the right person to bring it to life. You were always that person. While others saw dollar signs, you saw what I saw. The magic in these vines, the potential in this land, the importance of doing things right rather than doing them quickly. The wine world will call you a genius for what you've accomplished. But remember, the best vintages, like the best achievements, are those that honor the past while looking to the future. All my love, grandfather. I placed the letter in the Cellar archive, next to the original research notes and first bottles of Legacy. Future generations would know this story. How a worthless vineyard became a revolution in winemaking. How patience and vision trumped quick profits. Looking out over the thriving vineyard, I raised a glass of our newest vintage. To you, grandfather, I whispered. And to believing that some inheritances are worth more than money. The sunset painted the vines in golden light, and somewhere I knew my grandfather was smiling. After all, he'd known all along what this worthless vineyard would become. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving others wrong. It's proving that someone believed in you for all the right reasons.